Hello there, and welcome to the Recruitment Website Show. We have made it to episode number 10, and in today's episode, we're going to be looking at things you should ask your website provider before you hire them. So, with your hosts, me, Mark Wilkinson, and
me, Keith Devon. Yeah.
Excellent.
So this is hopefully going to be a really useful episode for people. I think whenever you're like starting off on a web project, it's easy to be a bit overwhelmed. You've got to kind of compare all these different services and vendors and providers and like try to make sense of them. So what we've tried to do is come up with a list of questions that I think would be. Some of them are fairly obvious, but some of them are like a little bit more testing, I would say. So hopefully, questions that people like us would potentially squirm a little bit if they're asked. And if they do squirm, maybe that's a bit of a red flag. I'd like to think we could handle most of these questions fairly confidently, but others may not, and that's the point, I think. So we've got, what have we got? 12 questions?
12 different questions and things to pose to any potential website provider that you might have. So I guess let's get cracking with the first one. Let me put that one on the screen.
So the first question is, can you describe the project team? And I think what we're trying to get at here is a number of things. You want to know who you're going to be working with, who's going to be working on the project, what kind of size of team is kind of behind the scenes, or is this a 2-person team? Is this a 50-person business and you're going to have a project team of 10 and they're going to be doing X, Y, and Z? I think it's really important to know what the kind of general shape of a team is going to look like before you start, because you might have personal preferences over whether you want to work with a lot of people or a few people, or if there are a lot of people, who are you going to be talking to on a day-to-day basis? Like, is there going to be a single kind of account manager or project manager that you can interface with all the time that kind of takes responsibility, or are you going to be thrown between loads of different people throughout the project?
Definitely. I think another thing to ask about that as well is, like, are those people likely to change? And there might be reasons why that is definitely going to happen. For example, it might highlight an agency that uses external freelancers to do various parts of a project, and they could be open and honest and say, yep, we're going to bring in person X to do this and person Y to do this. Mm-hmm. So they might be different depending on the current levels of work they've got at the time. Or it might give you an indication as to, like, whether if there's anyone in the business that's just not going to be there in a few weeks because they're leaving or something like that. I think that's an interesting question to ask. What sort of the team turnover and so forth, and what you're going to be working with. So can you describe the project team, who you're going to be working with? Kind of an important starting point, I think, for any sort of discussions about building a website, particularly recruitment one. Number 2 is, what is your process? So the process that the website provider goes through to get you from no website to finished product that's live, completed, and working absolute wonders for you. And this will, a question like this will potentially highlight the fact that they might not have a process, in which case, if they struggle to answer this question, do they have a process that they've worked through, or are they, what's the word, winging it to a certain extent? I'm not sure, but looking at what that process is and making sure that they have a process is important. Keith, what might that process look like for an agency?
Yeah, I think it depends, and this comes into one of the other questions later on. It kind of depends on what the website developer is going to be delivering as part of the project. But on a typical website project, you're talking about some kind of planning phase at the start, some kind of design phase, and this isn't just kind of graphics, but also like designing the kind of user interfaces and the user experience. So like, you might know that as like wireframes and things like that. Then the actual web design phase, like coming up with like mock-ups and things like that. Then you'll typically go into some kind of development phase. So you'll take what you've planned and what you've designed, and you'll start actually building it. You'll start testing things. There might be like some constant iterations of that little loop, like design, build, test, design, build, test, design, build, test, depending on if it's a kind of, I guess, waterfall style project or something a bit more agile, which is another good question to ask. And then I think the really important thing to note to get from this is, like you said, do they have a process? And is it a process that fills you with confidence that they can deliver? But also, what will your responsibilities be during each of those stages of the process? So how much time will you need to give? So, in the planning phase, it might be really, really quite intensive for you as a client, whereas in the development phase, you might not have too much to do, or maybe that's a time when you start to do your copywriting and gathering all the assets for the website. So I think that the process isn't just what the web agency goes through, it's also what you're going to go through as a client as part of the project.
It's everybody, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
And I think number one, the first part of that process we said was planning. And actually, if they don't have that in their process, there's probably a red flag, because they need to know what they are building, and you need to know that they're building what you think they're building. And the planning phase is a massively important step of that. We did a project last year. What year are we in? Might be the year before, actually. Started the year before, I think. And the planning phase with that was 3 or 4 months long. It was longer than we'd anticipated, but the planning phase was so important to understand what we were doing. And if we hadn't have done that properly, the outcomes would have been very, very different for the project. So I would really encourage you to flag up that what is that planning phase look like, etc., which is good. So that's about process. The next one to look at, number 3, is how do you ensure that the project stays on time and budget? Ask your website provider, what are the things that they are going to do to make sure that this thing carries on in the rate of pace that it should do. Things aren't going to spiral out of control in terms of time scales and maybe more importantly, budget. So what sort of things should we ask them about that particular?
I think this is linked in again to the process question, and also linked into the next question, which is around project management. But you're just trying to get an idea, just to get them, if they haven't thought about this kind of thing before, it'll become very obvious very quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have ways, we've developed, we've got experience about delivering web projects. We've seen web projects go really well. We've seen web projects go not so well. And hopefully we've learned a few things along the way, and we've adjusted those processes and those planning phases and communication and stuff like that. So it's just like trying to get from them, not that they can just throw a figure at you, like, here's a quote and it's going to take about 3 months. It's like, okay, you said that, but how are you going to make sure that actually happens? Like, what are some of the tools and processes that you have in place to ensure that that's actually going to be the reality?
Yeah, and I think if they don't mention project management in that answer, and they may well say, we have tried and tested project management processes that we use, which actually brings us then on to number 4, which I'll put on the screen now, is what is your project management process? So for that answer, and how to ensure you stay on task and on budget, it might be that we've got a fully, full project management process. We know what we're doing. We have procedures in place. So question 4 then should be, well, what are those project management processes? What are you going to do throughout this project that is going to enable that management to continue well? And things that you could or should probably ask in this section are, how often are you going to meet as a team? And I don't just mean a team as in the project team delivering this. I mean you as a team, the website provider, and your team on your side of things. All of you should be meeting. Now, whether you meet everyone involved or whether you select representatives to meet and so on is kind of up to you. But for projects that we deliver, we always have a weekly meeting. It doesn't really matter when that meeting is. Just pick a time. It goes in the diary, and it's every week. everyone turns up, and then we go through different things. So that's keeping everyone honest. It's keeping everyone accountable to the things that they should have done in that particular week, and keeping it moving forward. Mm-hmm. And then talk about what tools that you're going to use for project management. Presumably, they're not going to say, well, we send emails to each other. I mean, that's a bit of a red flag. It's not really going to be able to keep things going. So do they have a tool that they use? It doesn't need to be full-on project management, software. We use Trello for ours, which I know is software, but it's fairly simple. It's Trello. It's not not rocket science, but it works well. There's a process there. I think we've talked. I don't know whether we've talked about our project management process on previous episodes. I can't remember. But we use a Trello board for each things, and tasks move from left to right until they're done. So that's something that we would talk about in this sort of thing. And then also, like, we would be saying to potential clients, what their roles are in this project management and what they should be doing. And you could ask that, what is expected of me as a customer in terms of what should I be delivering, when I should be delivering, and so on. So I think those are important points for project management. Anything to add?
No, not really. Let's move on to the next question, which is number 5. What ongoing support do you provide? Now, the topic of support is one that is rightly really important to a lot of people looking for a website. Whether you've maybe been burned by bad support in the past, or you just are aware that a website is it's an organic kind of growing thing. It's not usually something that you just build and it sits there for 5 years and then you rebuild and it sits there for 5 years. There's usually work that goes into updates to be made with software and things like that, improvements to be made, best practices to follow, content to be added, like bugs to fix. There's all kinds of stuff that happens on an ongoing basis, and that can also include things like hosting, like if it's being hosted, or if you're self-hosting, like who's kind of supporting that kind of thing. So there's lots to talk about around support. So it could be, for example, you get a certain number of tickets per month, or a certain amount of development time or support time, a certain number of calls, or like video calls, or maybe it's free email support and paid in-person support. There's all kinds of ways that support and maintenance can be kind of chopped up and delivered. But I think it's really important to get a grasp of it, and get a grasp of like the time scales and the quality, because we know in this industry there is a pretty wide range in terms of like the quality of support you'll get from different vendors. There's some famously bad providers in the recruitment industry with regards to support, where you want to make a simple change on your website and it takes weeks or months for anything to happen. You just want to like absolutely avoid that kind of scenario. So it's really important to know.
Yeah, definitely. And support is so most, you want to know you're covered, don't you, going forward? So I think it's really important to ask. And I'd say, if they don't mention support, actually, it's probably a red flag, and you should always ask that question. But also, what type of support are you getting? Is it that, if you're the sort of organization that doesn't like sending emails for support requests, then ask, are you able to pick up the phone? Or are you able to organize a video call, or whatever it might be? But you need to know what you're going to get, I think, and that's important to ask on that particular point. And again, if they're not sure, then they might not have thought about it. So, think about that as a point.
And also, like, how much does it cost? Like, is it all included in a ongoing monthly cost? Is a support and maintenance contract additional at the end of a project? Is the cost likely to go up or down? What, if you ask the developer to do something that isn't covered in support, what happens? Yeah. I think that's super important. Yeah. Like there could be things that you need to do or ask for, features that you want to add that might not be covered in a general support contract. How much is that stuff likely to cost, and how long is that?
I've seen proposals and things that have like mandatory support, like you have to have 12 months support with us. Ask that as well. Am I going to be tied into a specific contract length of support that you need to take?
Yep.
Definitely something to ask. Number 6 on our list, or halfway there after this, is what will you not be doing as part of this project? So there's often in a proposal, for example, you would see, we're going to deliver this, and we're going to deliver this, and we're going to deliver this. But I think what's important is what sometimes what is seen as obvious by both parties as not being delivered or being delivered. What specifically are you not going to be delivering as part of the project? So one thing that's the obvious thing for this for me is like the content. So if you're building a website, it's probably not going to be the website vendor or the website provider's responsibility to provide content. But for example, who's going to add that content? Who's going to actually, whether it's copy and paste it into the website, who's going to actually do that? You might be thinking, well, I'm just going to deliver a lot of Word documents to the website provider, and they're going to actually put it into the system. The website provider might be saying, well, hang on a minute, we're not doing that. That was always your job. We're building you a content management system. Therefore, we want you to add it into the system. So working out what is not being done as part of this and stating the obvious, I think, is also really important. Another example would be stuff like browser compatibility, for example. It might be plainly obvious to the website provider that we're only going to build this for the latest versions of all the browsers. But you might have a specific case. Well, everyone here uses IE 11. I don't know why you'd still do that, but it's a good example. Therefore, we need to work on that. Therefore, that's something that you may need to, if they state what's not provided, it'll be plainly obvious to you when you read it that actually we're going to fall down there because we need this support or something like that.
Yeah.
So ask them what that is the case. What can they tell you that's not included in the cost is an important one.
Yeah, there's a really, really big one here is you mentioned content, and that's true. Like who's going to be writing and creating the content, but also if there's content to migrate,
yes,
who's going to be doing that? Because I think that's something that it's sometimes assumed that maybe a web developer or something will be able to do, when sometimes that's actually pretty much physically impossible because the platform that you're currently on doesn't provide any kind of export facility, and then you're kind of stuck in copy and paste mode. So I think that's really important. And also branding. I think when there's, on these projects, there's usually like a design element to it, but does that include actually coming up with the brand? Like if you're a startup, are you expecting the web developers to actually create the brand for you as well? Or is that happening separately and then they're just going to take that brand and base the web design on it?
Yep. For points. Number 7 is, ask them, do they have any industry experience? Have they built recruitment agency websites before? Do they have any experience of doing that? There are very specific things on a recruitment site that are not on a normal website, things that will catch people out if they don't know what they're doing, and therefore I would be asking this question. One of the obvious things in this side of things excuse me, is a job board. So a job board is pretty much, wanted on most recruitment websites. And it has some very interesting, distinct things that are different. One of those we've talked about in a previous episode is structured data and outputting that to make sure it gets picked up in Google Jobs. Do they understand what that is and so forth? And one of the things you probably want when you're asking for most projects in life is have they done this before? Have they got experience of doing it? Can they prove to you that they've done it and can deliver on it? Yeah,
we've seen, because we work in WordPress, we've seen a lot of recruitment websites built by just like kind of general WordPress developers. And the way that they approach the job boards can be very different. And actually, some of these developers kind of like decide to roll their own job boards. So they kind of create those data structures and pages and stuff themselves, and actually they're missing a lot of that structured data and functionality that you would maybe expect from a normal job board. So we've seen ones that, like, the searching and filtering is pretty much non-existent, the structured data is non-existent, the SEO structure of it is really poor. Whereas
expiring jobs is one as well. Expiring jobs and how to do it and what to do when they expire.
And what to do when people actually apply for those jobs. It's just very nuanced, and I like this is an area that you actually want some experience in. I think the rest of a recruitment website is typically fairly generic in terms of it's a B2B website, like brochureware website. It's really the job board that is is the thing that's so specific to the industry, which is the next question, actually. So the next question,
it is, number 8 is: can you show me some job boards that you have built? So making proving good on what they've said for question 7 there. If the answer is yes, we've done that, then have a look at some. Do they do these things that we've just been mentioning? What are the search and filter options that they have? Is it, I've made a job board and you can search for jobs. Is it literally just a box where you can type in a keyword? Does it have a more detailed, faceted search? What sort of thing are you looking for? And does it match your expectations on what they're going to deliver? That sort of thing. And like we've said, do the jobs that they've put have structured data? Again, if you watch the previous episode, we can talk about how to test those jobs. So you could test some of the previous ones, see if they actually have these features and they work properly, and so forth. And can candidates apply, and how do they apply? Is it an application form? Is that what you want? Or is it a link out to an external service? Have a look at them, scrutinize them, ask questions about them if you need to. But, is it what you think you should be delivered, potentially?
Yep. So,
number 9 is: can you show me how content will be managed? This is a really important one. I'll let you cover this one.
Yeah, for me, possibly not the most important. They're all important in their own ways, but this is one that we have a particular passion for, I think. So it's all very well and good being delivered a really kind of beautiful website, and it's got all these fancy animations and beautiful homepage and background videos, and like the job board works well and everything. And then you go to change something on the website, like you want to add something to the about page or change something in the footer, and you can't, or it's very difficult, or when you try to do it, everything breaks. It is, I think the range of content management is huge. So I think it goes. I've blew our own trumpets here because this is what we actually like are very, very passionate about. So when we build a website, we essentially try to make every single thing, every bit of text, every image that you on that website editable in some fashion.
And what we mean by that is you don't need to come to a developer or a website builder to make a change. You can do it in the content management system that we will deliver.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of that, so everything that you're delivered is editable, but also there's really no limit to what you can create in terms of, there's no page limit. So you're not limited to 10 pages and X number of blog posts, and you've got 3 templates to use, especially with the modern version of the WordPress editor. Gone are the days of, we'll deliver you 5 templates, you choose which one to use and input your text here, and your images there, and there. It's a much more flexible, modular way of building websites, where if you want to create, and this really comes into its own, I think, for marketing departments who want to create landing pages and campaign pages. And so they've got a vision for what they want it to look like, and they want it to look different to other areas of the website potentially. Now they can, and they should be able to do that without going back to their web developer and being charged a whole load, and maybe like their monthly fee goes up because they've asked for something one time. So there's so much to a site that you want to be able to edit without coming to people like us to do for you.
For sure. And in terms of like limits as well, a lot of, certainly some recruitment website vendors, they limit the amount of jobs you can have on the site as well. So, and that might be fine. That might be absolutely fine for you, but it's worth knowing, can you have 50 jobs on there at any one time, or what's going to happen? I've got 50 jobs. My plan's 50 jobs. What's going to happen when I want to add a 51st job? Can I not do that? Do I have to upgrade it? Can I upgrade it? All those sorts of questions are really important to ask. I think in terms of that.
The way I wrote this question is important. So I've said, can you show me? And I think,
demo.
If you can get a visual demo on a video call, like you're on Zoom or whatever, and you can actually get someone to show you a website that they've built and show you how that bit of text is edited and how that image in the footer is edited and how you change the telephone number of this person over here, that's super powerful. So I would definitely ask for that kind of demo. Because I think you might be surprised.
Yeah, and if they can't show you that, then there's probably some red flags. Don't get me wrong, they might not be able to show you that website because there might be issues about, looking at the back end of someone's website. But
absolutely,
they could certainly do some sort of like staging environment or remove the copy there, or even just show you a similar site of something else that they could use. I think that's important to show you. Let's move on to question number 10 that you should be asking your future website providers. What performance scores can I expect, and how will you help deliver these? So for this one, we're talking about performance scores such as Google PageSpeed Insights, things like GTmetrix, performance in terms of the speed at which those web pages will be loaded. Now, this is a difficult question, actually, for a website provider to answer, because a lot of the time, once they've delivered the website, external factors may influence those scores. Things you want to add to the pages after that may limit the scores. You may want to run tracking scripts and Google Analytics and things that are going to load in that you didn't know in the first place. But I think if they can give you an idea of what they're going to do to make those scores the best they can, then that's going to be good. If they haven't got an answer for that question completely at all, then that's a bit of a red flag. But they should be able to talk about the things they do on a website to make those scores as high as possible. We certainly do that on Coles. We can talk about responsive images and lazy loading images and all those sorts of things that will improve the page speed scores. Maybe they won't be able to say, hey, we're going to get you a 95 score on mobile, because that is very difficult. And actually, if they did say that, I'm not sure that would fill me with confidence, to be fair.
I think they'd have to prove it. They'd have to back it up with sites that they've built. And that's another thing to do. Actually, you don't even really need to ask this question. You can go to someone's portfolio, run them through the online speed tests yourself, and see what comes up.
Yeah, definitely. But worth mentioning, performance is important, isn't it? So it's worth mentioning.
Yeah.
Number 11, what are the details of the contract? So obviously you're going to have a contract with your website provider, and it's worth looking and asking them what those details are, if it's not obvious already from conversations you've ever had. So things like, how long is the contract? So if it's a monthly payment, what am I tied into? So is it like a 2-year contract and I'm paying X per month? So therefore I can know how much I've got to pay. What happens at the end of that contract? Is the website mine? Can I take it, move it wherever I want to? Do I have full access to the code? Can I make changes and such after that contract? Can I make changes within the contract? What happens if I decide halfway through the contract that it's not for me? Can I buy it out? Can I leave? Can I leave without having the website? It's really worth knowing the answers to those questions.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And if the answer is you can't take it with you when you're finished, or it's not yours, can you export the content in a format that makes sense to other providers? That's a good question to ask.
Yep.
So yeah, details of contract are definitely important. And then the last one is references, Keith.
Yeah, references. I mean, for me, I think this is the most important. I say content management is the thing that we are most passionate about, and I think it is super, super important. References are just the best way to actually learn about whether someone's worth working with or not. And I would I'd caveat that with the fact that you want to get references from similar projects and probably similar sized clients to yourself. So if you're a one-man startup, it's probably not that relevant to get a reference from a multinational enterprise. You probably want to be looking for like similar size companies, similar size projects, websites that you potentially like the look of. I would recommend talking on the phone with people if you can. I think you could probably get a much stronger idea of how someone feels, and they're potentially more likely to be honest on the phone than they are in an email, because an email is a kind of, it's a written record, and so I think people are more likely to be honest about the nitty gritty in a phone call than they are over an email. And then ask questions like, how was the experience? Like, what are they like to work with? Are they friendly? Are they combative? Like, were issues easy to resolve? Like, were they supportive? Did they go missing during the project? All these kind of things. Did the project come in on time and on budget? If it didn't, what were the reasons for that? The ultimate question, would you hire them again if you were in the same situation? I think that's a kind of catch-all question. Ask them specifically about support. What's the kind of aftercare been like and ongoing support been like?
Responsiveness of questions and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then get as many as you can. I think one of the dangers with references is that you ask a company for references, they cherry pick their best 2 or 3 clients or projects, give you those, and all you're going to hear is glowing reviews. I think, and it's quite easy to do actually, especially if you're going for one of the bigger providers, look at their portfolio and just grab a list of, again, companies that are similar to your own, and find them yourself. Like, connect with them on LinkedIn and say, look, I'm about to build my website. I'm thinking of hiring this team. Would love to pick your brains, and then you're not getting those kind of cherry picked. These are only the projects that went well. You're potentially getting some that maybe didn't go so well, or you might get a slightly more balanced view, I would think.
Yeah, there's nothing like talking to others that have used someone as their and getting their opinion and seeing what the quality's like. I think that's important.
Yeah.
So definitely references are good. Anyway, so there you have it. They are 12 things that you should ask your website provider before obviously like committing to a project and hiring them to deliver your website project. And hopefully they will be able to answer those, give you some solid answers and give you some confidence that they are going to deliver the project that you need. So that's all from us this week. If you would like to watch more of us, then we have all our past shows on the Recruitment Website Show LinkedIn page, which I would encourage you to follow, please. And then we can keep you up to date with the latest episodes. We will be live again next Wednesday at 1:30. Topic yet to be decided. If you have any ideas for topics, then please let us know that we can discuss with them. And if you've got any questions on this topic, you can contact myself and Keith on LinkedIn. Let us know your thoughts, and we can try and answer them. But until next week, we will see you then.
See you soon. Bye.